Greetings, I am Brenda Smith, and welcome back to another session of How to Live on Earth as It Is in Heaven. In this session, we will look at faith a little bit more, and then talk about the anointing and his role in our lives. So, as we begin, let's look at our lives. Have we done what God has asked us to do? Now, before you answer that, go back and read Hebrews chapter 11. Because Hebrews chapter 11 has the guidelines for faith. A big church does not count. Government-funded programs does not count. Test your faith with Hebrews chapter 11. God said in Isaiah chapter 43, verse 1, I will give men for thee, and people for thy life. Now, the question is, will you become more faithful and dependent on the people that God has sent for your life than God himself? This is the question that will determine who your faith and your dependency is in. God said, I am the author and the finisher of your faith. Therefore, he has already written the book for our life. And our part now is to read the book and do it. Our part according to the book. That is how the world will know that we have faith in God. We do not have to make it up as we go. All we have to do is go. And the power of God will do the rest. Then, as God does the rest, we are able to enter into his rest. The rest that's found in Hebrews chapter 3 and chapter 4, with great focus on Hebrews chapter 3, verses 8 through 19, and Hebrews chapter 4, verses 1 through 11. The reason we are not entered or have not entered into the place of that rest is because we really do not believe God. So now, let's look at the metamorphosis as it continues in our earthen vessels, learning about the power of the anointing, the Spirit of God in us, the power that facilitates our faith in the kingdom of heaven on earth, who is the anointing. The anointing is the seal who seals our adoptions as being sons and daughters of God. Romans chapter 8 verse 16 reads, the Spirit itself bears witness with our spirit that we are the children of God. Then in Genesis chapter 1 verses 1 and 2 reads, the earth had no form, and it was void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved. And when the Spirit of God moved, he was just waiting on something to be said so that he could cause something to be. Let's read. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the water. And God said, let there be light. When God said, let there be light, let's do a FYI right here. Our earthen vessels are 70% water. So the Spirit of God is now moving upon the face of the water. Our earthen vessels. And he's just waiting on something to be said by us. And when he do that, he can begin to create. In Genesis chapter 1, the earth was void and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Now I want you to remember this. Satan was cast out of heaven to the earth. And his very attributes is to be void, and he is the father of darkness. And those things manifested in the earth when he fell to the earth. But when the Spirit of God moved and God said, let there be light, the earth was no more void but had value. It was no longer dark, but it had light. This is what happens to us when the Spirit of God moves in our lives and we speak what he says. Value and light appears, and voidness and darkness disappears. Voidness and darkness are the very characteristics of Satan's presence, not only in the earth, but also in our earthen vessels. Now, when the Spirit of God is moving and God spoke, darkness ceased and light appeared. I just can imagine Satan thinking, oh no, not light, because he knows where light comes from. God has placed his image on the inside of us, and God's image is spirit, which manifests in our words, you all. Proverbs chapter 18, verse 21 reads, death and life is in the power of the tongue, and they that love it shall eat the fruit thereof. So what are you saying? And in Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 19, it reads, I have called heaven and earth to record this day against you, because I have set before you life and death, blessings and cursing. But he also just tells us, he says, choose life, and both thy and thy seed may live. Remember, God created us in his image. I can't say that enough. And the image of God in us is the invisible part of us. And the invisible part of us that is just like God is his word. This is the part of us that the spirit realm responds to, whether it be of God or whether it be of Satan. So my prayer for you is that you allow the burden removing, yoke destroying power of the anointing to operate in your life, and allow faith to manifest in the earth realm by hearing what God says and doing it. Join me next week as we expound on the works of the flesh found in Galatians, the 5th chapter. Once again, I am Brenda Smith, a Kingdom of Heaven ambassador, and this has been another session of how to live on earth as it is in heaven.